Here's J-Bone. Before we get into today's show, I want to let you all know that my career as an amateur virtual F1 driver continues tonight, Thursday, February 10th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, which is 12:30 a.m. UTC for my international audience. And guess what, everybody? It is Monaco week. I will be racing in the Monaco Grand Prix tonight on twitch.tv/Formula Bone in my sim rig that is complete with a steering wheel, pedals, a driver's seat, the whole 9 yards. It's like I'm sitting in a car, but really I'm sitting in a small room in Austin, Texas. As a reminder, I'm in the middle of doing an entire career mode season of F1 races on Twitch before the start of the real-life 2022 F1 season in March. I'm ashamed to admit that I took last place, P22, at the Spanish Grand Prix on Monday night because I'd never driven on wet tires and it was absolutely pouring rain the entire race. You can catch a little, what's the opposite of a highlight reel? A low light reel? You can catch a low light reel on my social media at Formula Bone if you want to revel in my terrible drivingness. But I'm hoping to rebound at Monaco tonight, which... Hoo boy, of all the places you want to try and rebound at, Monaco's definitely like bottom of the list, like Monaco, Jeddah, Baku. But I'm going to try. I'm going to do my best as I always do. So make your Thursday night bone-tastic with me, J-Bone, by tuning in to twitch.tv/Formula Bone at 6:30 p.m. CST, 12:30 a.m. UTC. All right, folks, here we go. This is the Formula Bone F1 show. J-Bone! Welcome back to the Formula Bone F1 show, the Formula One podcast that would actually change up its livery if it were to do a livery reveal. The livery of the Bonemobile hasn't changed. Don't have the funding. You know, we're like Haas last year, not allocating funds toward a livery reveal right now. But if you maybe buy enough of our sponsor products, buy enough merch, I can kit this thing out. Maybe one day I can even record from an F1 car. That would be actually insane. Could you imagine me doing this podcast from an F1 car? I'd even take like an F4 car, like the ones that just look like skinny, whittled down versions of F1 cars. I'd take it. Honestly, I would record in any car that is nicer than my 2008 Nissan Sentra SL, which is, to be honest, any car. Honestly, my absolute hamster cage on wheels is gonna break down any day now, and I'll keep you guys updated if that happens. Might have to hit one of you up for like a, car. But anyways, I am Jared Borislow, but you can call me J-Bone. Thank you for joining me here today, as always. And away we go. With today's first topic, let's talk about the biggest news in Formula One right now. That radio conversation between Red Bull sporting director Jonathan Wheatley and FIA Formula One race director Michael Masi under safety car at the end of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. This quote-unquote unearthed audio completely overshadowed Red Bull's livery reveal yesterday. The livery reveal, I will note, was so vague and underwhelming, unless you work for Oracle, I guess, that it made it not very hard for this news to overshadow the Red Bull livery reveal. Side note, we are currently 0 for 2 on interesting livery reveals right now. If another team barely changes their livery for their livery reveal, I might go full PETA and just throw red paint over all the cars just so they look like a little bit different. Don't put it past me. I'm crazy. So back to the big news here. In case you haven't heard, audio has been recently thrown into the limelight that many are claiming paints an even murkier picture of the ending to the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix than the one that we already know was pretty murky. In the clip, Jonathan Wheatley, Red Bull's sporting director, says to Michael Masi during the Latifi-caused safety car at the end of the race, obviously, those lapped cars, you don't need to let them go right away around and catch up with the back of the pack. Masi interrupts Wheatley here with, understood. Wheatley continues, you need to let them go. Masi interrupts again with, understood, just give us a second. Wheatley continues, and then we've got a motor race on our hands. Masi replies, understood. So this conversation is so controversial, not only because it was immediately followed by Michael Masi only allowing the lapped cars between Lewis and Max to unlap themselves, as Jonathan Wheatley had lobbied to Masi for, and which pretty much gifted the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix and the 2021 World Drivers' Championship to Max. But also it is controversial because in his reasoning to Toto after the race, Masi says to Toto, it's called a motor race, we went car racing, using the exact phrase and reasoning Wheatley had said to him just minutes earlier. This had a lot of people up in arms, as it makes Red Bull look to have a bigger hand in the outcome of the race than people originally thought. Just not a good look, Masi. If somebody lobbies to you, it's pretty easy to make it look like you came up with your own decision, unless you use the exact wording of that person in your reasoning later on. Like, I know he had a lot of stress on him at that point, maybe more stress than any person listening to this has ever felt in their life. What a crazy position to be in. But like, don't say motor race again, because people are latching onto that big time right now. It is all over the sporting world today, honestly, not just F1. This news has transcended F1. I've had people texting me who don't even watch F1 and are like, hey, how big a deal is this? And I'm like, I mean, it's not the biggest deal, but like, you know, it's definitely worthy of all the conversation it's dragging up right now. So what I just said is pretty much the argument for why this exchange is a big deal. Here is the argument for why it's not a big deal. Number one, Masi is always short like this during races, saying things like understood and give me a second and okay when he disagrees with what the team is saying, or even if he disagrees with what the team is saying. Whether he agrees with you or not, he's just trying to get you to shut up, honestly. If you listen to Masi's tone over the entire season, he's just like, oh my God, dude, like, shut up. Just let me operate. So when I first listened to this, and even now, I don't hear Masi being influenced by Red Bull so much as I hear Wheatley pleading his very biased case, as teams, including Mercedes, often do during races, and Masi being in the middle of making a ruling and just placating Wheatley and being like, yeah, okay, I get you, understood, shut up, let me make my decision. So it is also possible Masi already had his mind made up at this point and was already putting rulings into effect and was like, yes, I get it, Jonathan, just let me operate. Again, it is also possible that Masi was influenced by Wheatley. We'll never know, honestly. This audio is the most evidence we can have, and everybody listening to it is drawing different conclusions, right? So unless Masi comes out and says, here's exactly how much I was influenced by Jonathan Wheatley, we're not going to get our answer. So it's just conjecture, and it's a very two-sided argument that Formula One, I don't want to say loves, but the controversy of these two-sided arguments, Formula One fans like to use to be loud and say their opinions quite often. Now, another argument here for why this is not that big of a deal. People getting mad at this exchange need to remember that Toto Wolff asked Masi not to deploy the safety car on lap 37 after Giovinazzi's car came to a halt during the same race, the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, which Masi ended up not doing in agreement with Toto. People seem to really forget about that. It was a massive, massive ruling in the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix to not call out the full safety car and have it just be a virtual safety car because it didn't allow Max to close the gap to Lewis. Obviously, later on in the race, he ended up closing it under even more peculiar circumstances. But the point being, just because Masi did what the person said doesn't mean they influenced him. It might mean they influenced him. Who knows? But at least it goes both ways, you know? On a related note, Team principals will no longer be allowed to contact the race director mid-race to avoid situations like this, but sporting directors still will, as that's part of their actual job. We just won't be hearing it on the broadcast anymore, I believe. As always, as far as two-sided arguments go, the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle here, Maybe he kind of influenced him. Maybe he reassured him that what he was doing was okay. Who knows? We'll probably never know. This episode of the Formula Bowen F1 show is brought to you in part by a sponsor that I love, and I'm super excited to have supporting the podcast, Felix Gray Glasses. I'm literally wearing them on my face right now. These are the Kepler frames in the clear blue light lens, and I can't wait to tell you about them. The good folks at Felix Gray create effective, research-backed products to improve humans' relationships with technology. It all started 5 years ago when Felix Gray set out to create eyewear that would make it easier and more comfortable for humans to stare at screens. Why, you may ask? Because whether you like it or not, we all live in a digital world now, and that means we are forced to look at screens, and more screens all day, every day. And the thing about all these screens is that they are wreaking havoc on our eyeballs and brains and causing things like eye strain, headaches, and blurry vision. The blue light emitted from these screens is the culprit here, and Felix Gray's clear blue light lenses filter 15 times more blue light than other clear lenses. 9 out of 10 customers experience relief from eye strain, headaches, and or blurry vision. And Felix Gray Glasses don't just do a great job protecting your eyes and brains from the evil of screens. They're also incredibly high quality and built to last. Their frames are lightweight and durable organic acetate and are hand-finished in Italy. Ooh. And their lenses are double-sided, anti-reflective, scratch-resistant, and have the blue light filtration infused within the lens material itself. Felix Gray's lame competitors, rather than infusing their filtration into the lens itself, often just put a blue light filtering sticker on top of some crappy lens, which obviously peels off and cracks and is something you can and should avoid entirely, and you can by shopping Felix Gray. Felix Gray has both non-prescription and prescription glasses available. For those of you who already wear glasses and are ready for an upgrade, check out Felix Gray's full selection at felixgrayglasses.com/fbone, F-B-O-N-E, where you'll have access to free shipping, free returns, free exchanges. It is a completely risk-free shopping experience. You have nothing to lose, except maybe eye strain and headaches. felixgrayglasses.com/fbone. That's FELIXGRAY glasses.com/FBONE. Free shipping, free returns, free exchanges. There's a link for that deal in the description of this episode. Thank you to Felix Gray Glasses for supporting the Formula Bowen F1 show. Moving on, I miss hearing my beautiful listeners' beautiful voices. So I'm going to play some listener voicemails called into the Bowen phone by Formula Bowen F1 show listeners just like you. If you're listening to this right now, on a future episode, you could be listening to yourself. Because if you call into the Bowen phone at 833-200-0966 with a high-quality call, I'll play it. Simple as that. It only takes a minute to call in. But your voicemail, it could live on forever. I hope that dramatic reading has inspired you to call into the Bowen phone at 833-200-0966. Here is the first call.
J-Bone, Will, calling from beautiful Madison, Wisconsin. Go Badgers. Wanted to see what your thoughts are on an American joining the grid. I think, with the market booming in America right now for Formula One, I feel like the earliest I could see an American driver would be maybe Logan Sargent next year, Formula 2 driver, Williams Academy driver. I could see it happening. What are your thoughts? J-Bone.
J-Bone. First and foremost, go Badgers. Second, I think it's only a matter of time before an American is back on the grid. The most recent driver to represent the United States in Formula One was Alexander Rossi, who competed in 5 Formula One races in the 2015 season for Marussia, finishing as high as 12th at his home Grand Prix, the United States Grand Prix here in Austin, Texas, where I'm recording from. Now, the most prolific U.S. driver to compete in Formula One would have to be Mario Andretti. Despite being born in Italy and living there until he was 15 years old, Andretti chose to drive in F1 as an American and won the 1978 World Drivers' Championship, becoming the second American ever to do so, behind 1961 World Drivers' Champion Phil Hill, who, by the way, has a fascinating story, and I do hope to tell his story here on the podcast soon. Mario Andretti earned 12 wins and 19 podiums from 128 career F1 starts across 6 different teams over the course of his 14-year F1 career. Very legendary American racing driver. Now, like Will says in his call, with how big Formula One is getting in the United States, even spurning random Americans like me to start podcasts and brands around F1, there is a ton of money to be made by the team or teams first able to call up a talented and promising American driver. Now, emphasis on talented and promising. Just having an American in the sport is not necessarily good enough, in my opinion. Case in point, Haas, right? We have an American F1 team, Haas, but most American F1 fans that I know are not Haas fans because they have not really impressed us the last few years. Side note, I feel bad for all the American F1 fans who got into the sport in 2018 when Haas finished 5th in the Constructors, and then they became Haas fans because they're like, wow, this team, look at them. They came right in and they're doing pretty good. F's in the chat for your sanity over the past few years. I know you're listening, and just know, as much as I make fun of Haas on this show, I feel bad for you because it's tough. I totally love that you're supporting the American team as an American, but it's got to be hard. Just know that I sympathize with you as much as I contribute to the bashing of your team. So yeah, as far as the top candidates for next American F1 driver go, Logan Sargent is up there as, like Will said, he's a talented and promising American driver who is now in Formula 2 and is also in the Williams Academy now. So Logan Sargent didn't have the best introduction to the wider public eye, as after finally getting into Formula 2, he binned it hardcore at Jeddah in his second of 3 F2 races this past season. As some of you may recall, they showed that because a lot of us were looking at the F2 race before the Formula 1 race at Jeddah to see what this track was going to be like, because it was finished like 2 seconds before the weekend started. And Logan Sargent's crash turned out to be a good indicator of what was going to happen in the race, because Charles Leclerc and Mazepin, I believe, crashed at that exact same spot. So yeah, Logan Sargent, at least he's matching the F1 drivers in that regard. But, I'm anxiously awaiting Logan Sargent to get some F2 races under his belt. It's very awesome to have an American in F2 racing for a good team. He's racing for Carlin. Very exciting. Now, I will say this. If Sargent does make an appearance in Formula 1 in a full-time capacity, it definitely would not be until after 2023, in my opinion. So it wouldn't be after this season. It would have to be after the next season at the earliest, because Oscar Piastri and Nick DeVries are both waiting in the wings ahead of him right now, as are a number of other more experienced drivers who have already proven themselves potential F1 candidates. Being an American, in the money grab there, could definitely see him jump some people. There's no chance he gets into Formula 1 before Oscar Piastri or Nick DeVries, unless he absolutely lights it up in F2 this season. It's the only way I see it being possible for him to get in for 2023. He would have to crush it, get top 3 probably, and then have somebody go, oh, look at all the American money we can get. Let's throw him in. I think also I'm trying to think of who all is, maybe leaving Formula 1 after this season. Potentially Fernando Alonso, you have to assume, because he's very old. But other than that, there's not... Mazepin's got the money. Mick's definitely not leaving F1 unless something crazy happens. There's just not that many spots. Maybe they'll add another team to the grid. That would be cool. So we have 22, which brings back bad memories, because as I said at the beginning of the podcast, I just finished P22 in my Twitch race at the Spanish Grand Prix. Don't want to think about 22 cars on the grid right now, so I'll move on. The other American I'd consider to be a top candidate for next American in F1 is current IndyCar driver Colton Herta. So to tie everything together here beautifully with a nice little bow, Colton Herta races in IndyCar for Andretti Autosport, which is owned by Michael Andretti, the son of the aforementioned Mario Andretti. Michael Andretti came this close. My fingers are really close together if you're not watching this on YouTube. This close to buying Sauber. By the way, the amount of people insulting my pronunciation of every word right now on TikTok is getting absurd. If you want to laugh at people just roasting me for saying things wrong, go check out my TikTok. I'm trying over here. Remember I said, I was like, in the beginning, I was getting a lot of stuff really right. Like some of the harder track names to say, I had people being like, dude, you say this better than I do. But lately, a lot of the driver names, and I'm getting fried out here. And I apologize recently. I was like, I'm sorry that I have a proper noun pronunciation disease. It's called Americanism, and I'm doing my best over here. But, you know, it's a hurdle that I have to get over. So I'm just going to go with Sauber because I feel like that's more correct. Anyways, Michael Andretti came this close to buying Sauber, the F1 team racing currently as Alfa Romeo, late last year. And if that deal had gone through, it was very likely that Colton Herta, who's seen as something of a racing prodigy at 21 years of age, would have been racing in F1 this upcoming season in place of Guan Yu Zhou. However, the deal ended up falling through. I believe Andretti got a Formula E team instead, and Guan Yu Zhou got the spot. Colton Herta staying in IndyCar. By the way, if you want to learn more about Guan Yu Zhou, check out the episode of the Formula Bowen F1 show that directly precedes this one, where I do a deep dive into the life of Guan Yu Zhou. I will say this, everybody. I know you're anxiously awaiting my decision here. Based on hype, name recognition, and demonstrated talent, I, J-Bone, hereby proclaim that my pick for the next American F1 full-time driver is Colton Herta, and I believe he'll be in Formula One starting in 2024. That is my Bonestradamus pick. So saith Bonestradamus. Valentine's Day is almost here, so I've written a love poem for you all, and it reads as follows. Roses are red, violets are blue. Don't let a wild pube wreck you. Valentine's Day is just around the corner, folks, and our sponsors at Manscaped are here for you with the best tools to get your balls ready for this special occasion. This V-Day, it's time to join the 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped, the leaders in below-the-waist grooming, with our exclusive offer. Go to manscaped.com and use code FBO for 20% off plus free shipping. That is free shipping, folks. It's hard to get free shipping these days. And I'm giving it to you with code FBO at manscaped.com. Manscaped, by the way, just launched their 4th generation trimmer, the Lawnmower 4.0. I have it sitting right here next to me. Look at it on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. It's beautiful. The trimmer is waterproof, and it helps reduce a bunch of manscaping hazards such as nicks, ingrown hairs, and grooming accidents. It also features wireless charging and comes with 4 guard lengths for just the right trim. Manscaped also has a nose hair trimmer that is an absolute godsend when you have a hairy face like I do. I love mine. You'll love it too. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code FBO at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use code FBO. Join Cupid and shoot your arrow with Manscaped this Valentine's Day. Thank you to Manscaped for supporting the Formula Bowen F1 show. You know what? Let's go back to the Bone phone for another call, baby.
What's going on, J-Bone? This is Walker from Dallas. So my call is about how I don't think that the racing is going to be as good as Formula One thinks it's going to be. I think these engineers are crazy good at finding loopholes and still getting insane downforce that creates dirty air. I think they're going to find plenty of ways to skirt the regulations and make sure that the cars are as fast as possible. There's no way that they can shorten the pack to a 1.5 second gap between the first and last. Mercedes and Red Bull just have far too competitive of a package and way better engineers than the likes of Alfa, Williams, and Haas. And we've seen the Haas car. It looks terrible. And I know it's just renderings. We haven't seen the physical car yet, but I think that car is going to be another absolute donkey. But it won't be as bad as it was last year. But we will see. If Mick Schumacher can get it right, maybe he's competing for points in a couple of races this year. But I don't think that the cars are going to be as competitive as they're leading it on to be. All right, J-Bone, have a good one. Peace.
I love that based off of renderings of the Haas 2022 car, Walker from Dallas has already proclaimed it to be a donkey, a quote-unquote donkey. I love that. That's the kind of Haas hate and Haas disbelief that I can get behind here in the Formula Bone F1 show. Now, I tend to agree with Walker in that I think the racing after a big rules change will never be as good as the FIA wants it to be because of all the incentive that there is for teams to find loopholes and things that the FIA didn't think about when they make the new regulations. However, I think we're all going to see a noticeable change in the racing this season due to there being less dirty air because of the new regulations. If you were to ask anybody what the biggest change was for this year, it's that there's too much dirty air caused by all of the things that the cars were doing in the turbo hybrid era to go faster. And so less dirty air seems to be the focus. I would find it hard to believe that all of the people behind making these decisions would not end us at a conclusion where there was less dirty air, even if it was just a little bit less. So I'm hoping to see the racing improve. I'm cautiously optimistic that it will improve while also being realistic and believing that there is still going to be a top, midfield, and bottom as far as, the grid goes and teams and cars. I can summarize it, similar to what Walker from Dallas said. I don't think Mazepin is going to podium in 2022, but maybe, just maybe, he'll finally be able to get in the points. Who knows? Man, when Mazepin gets in the points, I might have to do a whole episode on that. Just like going back through everything I've ever said about him and being like, dang, I'm still right, but maybe I'm also a little wrong. Thank you so much for joining me for another F1 offseason episode of the Formula Bone F1 show. Before I get going, I'd like to run you through the links that I've placed in the description of this episode. You can help support the Formula Bone F1 show financially by buying Formula Bone merch at bolenmedia.com/shop. You can also support the show financially in an even greater capacity by supporting today's sponsors. Guys, our sponsors are amazing. They help make it possible for me to do this show. So if you can support them, I'd really appreciate it. Shop Felix Gray Glasses risk-free with free shipping, returns, and exchanges at felixgrayglasses.com/fbone. If you like the glasses I'm wearing, these are the clear lens Keplers. Big fan. You also can prepare for Valentine's Day the right way with Manscaped at manscaped.com with promo code FBO for 20% off plus free shipping. What a great deal. 20% off and free shipping. You can join the 200-plus member Formula Bone Discord server with the invite link I've placed in the description of this episode. Hop in there if you enjoy the pod. We're building a nice community in there. Very fun, very laid back, but a nice place to have a little casual conversation. You can also watch me live stream myself playing the F1 video game from my sim rig with my steering wheel, my pedals, my driver's seat, all that jazz at twitch.tv/Formula Bone and talk to me in chat while I do it. Again, Monaco Grand Prix tonight. Tune in, baby. Again, every link I just mentioned can be found in the description of this episode, wherever you're watching, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. All those links in the description of this episode. You can follow me, J-Bone, everywhere on social media at Jared Borislow. That's at JaredBorislow. That's J-Bone's real name. And if you're now all caught up on the Formula Bone F1 show, but want to keep hearing my voice, I co-host a comedy podcast called the Ross Bolen Podcast, where we share a ton of laughs covering a very wide variety of topics, including current events, non-F1 sports, weird news, music, food, cool animals, insane history, and more. While also diving into some more serious mental health discussion as well. It's a very well-rounded show. If you like this podcast, I promise you will love that podcast. Check it out wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. That's ROSSBOLEN, the Ross Bolen Podcast. It's time for the NPR style sign-off. The Formula Bone F1 show is recorded in Austin, Texas, and brought to you by Bolen Media. It's hosted by me, Jared J-Bone Borislow, and I also produce the show because I'm a content machine. Kate Orris makes a bunch of the show clips that you see on social media at Formula Bone. Our iconic theme music and Twitch stream music is by 7 to Midnight. You can follow him on social media at the number 7 TO Midnight. You can follow the show on social media by following at Formula Bone everywhere. You can watch the show on YouTube by searching Formula Bone. You can help the show gain new listeners by rating and reviewing the Formula Bone F1 show on Apple Podcasts and by rating it on Spotify. Until next time, folks, J-Bone!